LSO 87. And Tanya, as we jump in, would you please walk us through that bill, and then we'll look forward to our colleagues from construction management to catch us up. Good morning to all three of you, not just Tanya. So,
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Tanya Heitrick, I'm the Operations Administrator for LSO. And in your packet, you have 26 LSO 87 Working Draft 0.4. The bill title is K-12 School Facilities Maintenance and Appropriations. Recall at your May 30th meeting, you requested this particular bill draft, and it's kind of an old friend. The Select Committee last year passed a bill that increased the major maintenance from 115 to 135, and then increased another portion. But on the floor, a motion was made and it passed, and in the final bill, this increase is limited to one school year. And so the committee's request was to extend that to 135 in perpetuity. Basically, the Senate set a sunset date for that provision, for lack of a better word. And so it returns the allowance for the extra square footage indefinitely, and aligns with your proposal last year. So I'll begin walking the bill quickly. Section 1, page 1, line 9 through page 5, line 10 amends 2113-309 M Romanet 5 capital G 2. And that is the portion that directs routine maintenance. Recall that both of these changes affect not only major maintenance, but routine maintenance. And so if you look on page 3, lines 2 through 10, that's where you will see the stricken language and the new insert. And recall, there's been a ratcheting down. Initially, I think the allowance was 200%, and then districts to come into alignment and allow them to address their excess square footage after the state took ownership. They had a ratcheting down from 200% ultimately to the 115. And then you'll note on page 3, line 12, this is where the change is made to major maintenance. That statute is 2115-109. And the substantive language is on page 5, lines 5 through 10. Section 2 contains the appropriations necessary to fund these modifications. You will note that one provision is to the Department of Education and the School Finance Division. That's the, that's on page 6, lines 4 through 14. And that number is $11,800,000. And then page 5, lines 14 through 20, through page 6, line 2, that's where the appropriation is for major maintenance, and that figure is $31,900,000. And the effective date is effective immediately, so districts know what's coming in the next school year, allowing them to plan for the additional funds. So subject to the committee's questions, that's the content of the bill draft.
for our colleagues from the House side, I think that the floor amendment that you alluded to, Tanya, was a Senate amendment. Is that correct? And that changed the language in the bill and made this a one-time appropriation, which seems a little untenable. So that's why we have this bill, correct? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Committee, any questions for Tanya on this one? Is everybody up to speed with what we're doing here? Okay, Representative Bratton, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, do we have, so we changed this to 135% for 1 year. Do we have any data information on the effectiveness of that change? I mean, it's just 1 year, but if we want to make it permanent, then
Mr. Chairman, Representative, are you asking how the districts expended the money this year? Is that your question, and how that was effective? I don't know that. I'll turn it over to Mr. Walmart.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Representative Bratton, this doesn't, I mean, the change, the 1 year change took effect July 1st of 2025 for school year 25-26. We're just barely a month and a half into that additional funding of that excess square footage. I don't know that there's any feedback perhaps that we can offer, at least from our perspective. I would defer to the State Construction Department as part of their facility planning process if they've heard from districts on how they anticipate to deal with the additional funding or what they anticipate to use additional funding for that excess square footage. But I can't recall either from testimony even last year. Really, I think the concept was there is this amount of excess square footage that's not being under the 115% provision that was in place prior to this school year, and then effective after this school year. There's this excess square footage that districts are maintaining but not being funded for. And I think that's the rub per se.
thank you.
Follow-up, Representative, you good? You'll recall, Representative, that was an effort that came from, among other places, that our House Appropriations folks, I think, were pretty adamant that we needed to address major maintenance and routine maintenance in a better way. And it was primarily all of that excess square footage that we just have not been funding. For years, the school districts have been working hard to eliminate that excess square footage, but in some cases, you can't do that. If you take Campbell County High School, for example, you can't change how wide the hallway is. You know, Sheridan High School is a good example. They've got an excess square footage because it was built before the state took over. Any other questions, committee, for Tanya on this one? I thank you, guys. We'll let you, Catherine, do you have something to add on this front?
Oh, yes, I do.
No, please.
I'm going to present on the next item,
Yes, you
Mr.
do.
Chairman.
All right. Well, please take it away. Thank you.
Good morning,
Good
Mr.
morning.
Chairman and members of the committee. Can you hear me all right? Catherine Camerati, LSO Budget Fiscal. I'm here to present on the next agenda item, which you should have a new copy that details the estimated impacts of 26 LSO 87 that Ms. Hytrek just went over. The reason you have a new copy are simple corrections to school years. These are not substantive corrections to the estimates that are provided in the memorandum. As we heard Ms. Hytrek explain, the proposed legislation does two things. It will permanently increase the allowable educational square footage from 115% to 135% of the statewide building adequacy standards determined by the School Facilities Commission, and appropriate funding for the fiscal year 2027-2028 biennium. As we heard, during the 2025 general session, the legislature had increased that allowable education square footage from 115 to 135 for 1 year. And as a result of this, LSO estimates the funding computed by the major maintenance formula to increase by $31.9 million, and funding for the K-12 routine major maintenance by $11.8 million over school years 2026, 2027, and 2027, 2028. The bottom line being that the amount will now be included in the State Construction Department's standard budget going forward as set by statute.
Catherine, let me interrupt real quickly and just, committee, this is the memorandum estimated impacts of LSO 87. Should be in your packet. Okay, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could back myself up for 1 second, I myself am going through a learning curve. I normally staff Select Cap Fin. What is K-12 major maintenance? Well, the legislature is charged with maintaining a complete and uniform system of public instruction. This duty is satisfied by the legislature by financing major building and facility repair and replacement, which is called major maintenance, and routine maintenance as prescribed by the K-12 funding model. Note that major maintenance is administered by the School Facilities Division within the State Construction Department, and routine maintenance is administered by the Wyoming Department of Education. So two separate things going on. As shown by the top of page 2 or the back of the page, the major maintenance formula can be broken down pretty simply. The formula is the authorized gross square footage of all school district facilities multiplied by a per square foot replacement value cost factor for each building category, which the product of that is the total cost of replacement value. The total cost of replacement value is then multiplied by 2.5% to arrive at the annual major maintenance amount. So two things, total cost of replacement, 2.5, bring them together, you get the annual major maintenance amount. And small corrections, again, with the dates, my apologies. So just for 2025, 2026 school year, big takeaway here, both the K-12 funding model, routine major maintenance, and the K-12 major maintenance formula allocate funding based on the authorized educational gross square footage amount, using the lesser of the actual educational gross square footage or 135% of the commission's adequacy standards. One distinction, major maintenance is not routine major maintenance, K-12 major maintenance formula. Lesser of decision is made at a district level, and routine major maintenance is lesser of decision is made at the school level. But moving forward after school year 2025, 2026, unless statute is amended, authorized educational gross square footage will revert to the lesser of the actual gross square footage, or 115%, not the 135. So it's that change between 115 or 135 is the distinction there between 2025, 26 and going forward, unless this proposed legislation changes it. Both formula use the school district's prior school year grade configuration and average daily membership to determine the allowable educational gross square footage. And going back to that distinction, routine major maintenance as calculated by the funding model, the lesser amount is computed at the school level, and major maintenance calculates it at the district level. Well, what does that mean? What is the implication of that? It means that approximately 960,000 more square feet are included in the major maintenance level. And on a completely separate note, the major maintenance formula also provides funding for non-educational gross square footage, which is allocated on a percentage basis ranging anywhere from 100 to 70%. And this is based on the proportion of total non-education gross square footage to education gross square footage. For illustrative purposes, Table 1 provides an updated cost matrix, which estimates the 2027 to 2028 impact of modifying the allowable education building gross square footage percentage all the way down to 100% up to 145% of the commission's statewide building adequacy standards. So where are we now? We're at 115%, which is why that column is simply omitted or blacked out. But you'll see on the low end, we would be spending less, which is why it is negative in the table. And on the higher end, we're funding at an estimated 41.2 million more. Section 2 of the bill draft contains the estimated appropriations from the School Foundation Program and Wyoming Department of Education to ensure that the payments to school districts are sufficient, and these estimates remain estimates and will need to be precised over the next few months, as we have mentioned before. And naturally, if you propose this legislation, there will be a fiscal note prepared for it in December on the introduced version of the bill. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Committee questions on Catherine's work. Thought that was very well presented. Thank you. Thanks to all three of you. We will probably come back to you with a question a little bit later, but I want to allow the department to come up and get to any other testimony. Representative Bratton, did you, hang on just a second, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one question. If because the formula changed from 2% to 2.5%, and that generates that additional $59 million, can't $32 million of that money be used for the major maintenance?
Matt, do you want that one?
Mr. Chairman and
Thank you.
Representative Bratton, I'm not tracking the 59 million. Where you grabbing? Is that out of the supplemental budget or the budget request from the department?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman and Representative Bratton, I think how I interpret that request is the standard budget of 100, I think it's around 176 million, is contemplated at the 2% replacement factor or 2% multiplier.
Right.
And then they've included an exception request of 59 million in their budget request. I did actually have a question to the department about that. I think it could go either way. I think this is a formula-driven amount. That 2.5% became part of the standard budget as part of the legislative process in changing that as part of the formula. I think it's just an interpretation from either the state budget department or the state construction department that 59 million presumes two things. The cost replacement multiplier is 2.5% and 115% of the allowable commission square footage amount. It has no bearing on your legislation. That budget request is based upon current law. So it presumes the 2.5% multiplier, and it presumes 115% for the routine and major maintenance funding going forward. The purpose of this bill draft and the appropriations contained within it is that if you do increase that allowable square footage to 135% of the commission standards, it's going to cost the 31.9 million on major maintenance funding and the 11.8 million on routine maintenance funding. It is in addition to the current status of law. The 59 million in their exception request just funds the status quo. So it can't go towards that 135% because it just won't fund it. You'll be short the 31.9 million still, if that makes sense.
Representative Bratton?
Thank you. It does, but can they make a request? Can they still use some of that money if they wanted a major maintenance? That's still part of the budget, the block grant fungible money that they get. So they could, if they needed a major maintenance or even maybe a component, use that money for that.
So, Mr.
Wilmore,
Chairman,
go ahead.
Representative Bratton, this is how it in reality would work. They would, if you changed this in statute without a corresponding appropriation, their first year in funding would fund based upon the 2.5% replacement factor and 135% allowable square footage. They would come back in your supplemental budget and ask for the $31.9 million because now they're short $31.9 million in the second year of the biennium because they paid out what the law required. And so the request doesn't go away. And in fact, statute requires that any subsequent payment shall adjust any shortfall or overpayment in future payments. So it would just be the, dog chasing its tail every budget request, because your law is changed up to the 135%.
Does that help? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman and Representative Brandon, as I said in the beginning, I raised the question back to the department at the beginning, why wasn't this included as part of your standard request, why is it included as an exception request? In my mind, it doesn't make sense. The formula changed, the formula should account for what your new standard budget is. But I don't know if that, again, was a state budget department or a state construction department decision on that.
Committee, other questions for Matt, Tanya, or Catherine? Appreciate all of you, and we reserve the right to throw up a hand here pretty quick.
Sure do.
Director McComey, my gosh, it's good to see you. Come on down. We would love to get your thoughts on LSO 87, K-12 School Facilities Maintenance and Appropriations.
Okay, thank you,
Morning.
Mr. Chairman. Dale McComey, I'm the Director for the State Construction Department. I think your LSO staff did a really good job of explaining the bill. Again, for the members that were on the committee last year, we had this overall discussion. I really asked for it as an interim topic last year, which it was, and we talked about it. And the reason for that is in my previous role as director, we had done some studies through that 2016-18 timeframe on what it takes to maintain the buildings in the state. The cost of the state, if we don't, results in more capital construction. And through those studies over that 2 or 3 year timeframe, by a number of consultants that had done work for us, it was looked at that we're really underfunding our major maintenance. Our life expectancy for our buildings based on that funding level was anywhere between 35 and 50 years. I think you can see some of that with Rock Springs, Campbell High School. They're 52, 53 years old. Our proposal and the consultants' proposals was to try to drive that life expectancy to about a 75-year time period. By going to the 2.5%, and looking at the square footage, there was 3 or 4 things. And at that time, when I was previously director, we addressed a couple of things through this committee and through the legislature to shore that up. And then what was left is the recommendation of the 2.5%, and then addressing this difference in square footage. And so again, the committee took this on last year, and I think we came to a good place with that 135%. And I think that would really create that life expectancy, a longer life expectancy. And what it showed, if I recall the number off the top of my head, is that over 75 years, even if you factor in the increase in major maintenance, the capital construction costs that you would not see by having a longer life of our existing buildings was about a $3.3 billion savings to the state on capital construction. And so it offset on that. So a true savings of $3.3 billion. And that was the reason that I came forward to the committee last year. So a couple of things from the questions that I heard for the committee. You can take a school building, and they vary from year to year on how we fund that, because your major maintenance formula also takes into account the number of students, or the ADM in that formula, and that drives then square footage per student, that drives then how much you get for a building. So when we talk about excess square footage, it's 115%. Yes, there's a number of districts that have excess square footage, but some of that is driven truly on a year-to-year basis on the number of students they have. So even a brand new school that we're proposing to put online, the state consciously designs that building so they're at only 90% capacity. So you have a 10% excess capacity based on ADM within that school building. So we're only funding that school building at a major maintenance at 90%, even on a brand-new building. And you get into some of these older school buildings, pre-Campbell, that were built, again, come back, let's use Rock Springs, let's use Campbell. They started off with a school of a certain size, and I believe both those buildings had 3 to 4 additions put on, extra square footage. Of course, when you're putting those additions on, there's different ways you got to put that on, and hallway space and connectivity and all that sort of thing. So you lose some efficiency in that building had you not maybe perhaps designed those buildings back in the era for additions. I don't know whether they did or not. There's some schools that I've seen have done that, others that I didn't see that in, and I think one of those is probably a good example of Campbell High School, where they added on the outside, you get these big wraparound hallway spaces, you add a bunch of square footage to the building, but it's still driven by the number of students in the building, so you have that inefficiency in the building, so they don't get as much for major maintenance. So this change, again, your LSO staff mentioned it started off at like 215 or 200%, went down, I think, to 55%, went down to 135%, went down to the 115%. By bringing that back up, we're taking care of a bunch of those buildings that currently have excess square footage, some of it driven simply by student population going up and down from year to year, and some of these older buildings with the being inefficient. I think we, the state and the districts have made headway on disposal of old buildings. And that was the purpose, I think, of this 115% going down from the 200% back when the school facilities started, was to try and get rid of those old inefficient buildings. And I think that's happened. We've had a number of buildings just this year go offline within the districts. And so that continues on. You'll hear some discussion in the budget coming up about Rendezvous Elementary in Riverton. Again, when I was previously director, there was a start in that particular district in Riverton to dispose of a bunch of buildings. They came to the realization, just like we did, that it was killing them. They could not keep their buildings up because they had too much excess square footage. So the recommendation through that Mercer study back then was to go from 5 elementaries down to 3 elementaries. That's where they're headed. To get rid of the Tonkin Center, their old high school and all of that. That's since come down to try and right-size that. So again, I think across the board, I'm seeing that with the districts in disposal of buildings. Albany 1 has disposed of just recently, and it's been more on their rural schools, but I think about 5 requests just here in the last couple of months. We've got some more requests coming up. I think we've had 5 or 6 bigger buildings since I've come back on as director be disposed of. Here in this county, they've disposed of quite a few buildings to, again, try and right-size the fleet and not spread the peanut butter really thin over all of these buildings, but try to do the right thing with the number of buildings that they have. So with that, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions.
Questions, committee? Representative Geringer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director, for being here, talking to us. One of the things you mentioned, maybe I misunderstood or the number caught my attention. You mentioned a savings of $3.3 billion?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct, yes.
Okay, can you walk me through, what kind of horizon is that? What does that include? Are we talking about because of maintenance that increases our life cycle? What's the lifespan of the buildings? Give me a little more information on that if you could.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. The studies that were done estimated that again, depending on what level, and we started down at a level of major maintenance, I think of 1%, if I recall, and it went up to like 1.6, 2%, 2.5, and actually went out to 3%. And so when we were looking at the age of those buildings, how can we better maintain the buildings so we're not replacing them as quickly or as quick? And what that does is that saves on capital construction costs for those buildings if we can keep those buildings moving in the portfolio longer. And so at the 2%, and there was some other factors in there just besides the 2%, but at that point in time, we were looking at 2% funding for major maintenance. So where does that put us? Again, excess square footage, not paying for that. There was some issues with CRV values and things like that. What numbers were we using in that we took care of? And so when we went through that process, it said the lifespan was estimated to be 35 to 50 years is what we're getting out of our buildings. And again, I think if you look at some of the buildings we've been replacing, a number of them are that age, a number of them are in the 60-year range. And so we said, okay, so how long should we keep these buildings around? What makes sense? And so we arrived at about 75 years. If we take care of them, we do some retrofits in between to get them back up to how we're teaching kids today. Certainly when I went to school at the elementary in the early 60s, it's different how they teach today. I mean, I didn't even have a computer when I went to college. I mean, I started with slide rule. So, how do you modernize these schools? So retrofits built into that. What the study found is that probably the optimization and the 75 years, and the way we arrived at 75 years is there was a conscious decision to arrive at that. We could, if we used 3%, that curve got really flat, and we could probably keep a school indefinitely at 3% funding and funding the total square footage of that building. We could keep it indefinitely. But we asked ourselves, so what's education going to look like, however, 75 years from now, this being 2016-18 timeframe? Are kids even going to be in school? Is it all going to be remote? I mean, how is it changing over time? So does it make sense to fund it at that much higher level of funding? Or have a life cycle and life cycle these schools out, be able to try and somewhere in between do a re-optimization of the building? And we've got some of that going on in the state right now. In Laramie County, for example, we're looking at their junior high and doing that very exact thing. So there was a conscious decision. So the $3.3 billion came from if we look 50 years into the future, that $3.3 billion was, if you add up all the costs for the major maintenance increase, subtract out what new portfolio, age out those buildings, look at the current fleet of buildings we have, what's their age, aging those out by 2% versus 2.5% versus 3%, what's that savings? And arriving at that 2.5% level, we would save $3.3 billion in state funds by not having to replace buildings as often.
Director, thank you. Representative, follow-up, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. A couple things here. So it sounds to me like we're talking about not necessarily cost savings, but cost avoidance. And then the other thing is there any account for inflation in what you're talking about there?
Director?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's probably a better term, is cost avoidance. That's what the state would save by avoiding having to replace those buildings. And if I recall, Mr. Chairman, and this is trying to think about when the study was done, but yes, I think we did look inflation, and I don't recall what it was, whether it was the 3% inflation rate, but I think we did take that into account. Currently, what we're seeing is between 4 to 6% inflation rate right now, right on average on our buildings.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. In theory, we're inflating the replacement value of the CRV and we're inflating the future buildings, so you end up getting a wash on the performance.
Yep.
So, Director, thanks for reminding us of those days, 16 through 18. A couple of us were there, and we did quite a bit of work on this major maintenance front. Spent an entire interim, and it was one of our interim topics, and the department did a great job of bringing information to us, and it really opened my eyes. We didn't get a lot accomplished. We went into some times that were pretty turbulent. You might remember about 2020, right in there. So we haven't quite gotten there until these past couple of sessions, and I think there's more and more realization now that we need to take care of this fleet. So that's kind of what we're up to here. But committee, anything else for the director on this front?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, one other thing, as far as the reference to the $56 million increase for the exception budget, that is a budgeting process through the state. So we, through the budget office, we get what our standard budget is. And so starting next year, if we get that money for the next year, then that'll become the standard. And then each year we come back and we adjust that. So in the budget cycle, you'll see this big request because of the going from the 2% to the 2.5. But within that interim time period, we also look at major maintenance along with your LSO staff and say, okay, how many students, what's our square footage, what's the cost CRV value, that's changing. We look at those. So this last year, that was a $2.5–3 million increase, I think, something just that. So we'll come back next year and that will add back in, that'll be part of the standard budget. So it's just an ongoing, if you look, typically if we, an agency, go to the governor and say, we need more money than we had last time, that's an exception request, so.
So Director, I had a question. Can you give us a wag as to how many of the districts, 48 of them out there, how many have excess square footage? Is it almost every one of them?
That's what I was going to say. I would guess it's about every one of them, because even some of our districts that say we've got some districts that they have a single building. A district is a K-12. And so that number of students that are in there, and if it's a newer building and we designed it at 90%, it meets our standards, so it might not truly have excess, but the amount that we're paying them, we're not getting them 100% unless they're at a capacity within that brand new school. That new school's not driving that total major maintenance ask unless it's at 100%.
And then some of the legacy schools that I alluded to earlier,
Yes.
you touched on it as well. You know, the Sheridans, the Campbell counties, a lot of those buildings were built before the state put specs together. So Representative Provenza, go ahead.
I would like to defer to Mr. Wilmot.
I was going to do the same thing. I appreciate it. So Mr. Wilmarth, do you want to walk us back to those days?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, just to, on the count of school districts, who's being funded on actual versus the lesser of their allowable or actual. So at 115%, approximately 4 districts are being funded on their actual educational square footage. And that the unfunded total square footage in the system is about 5.1 million gross square feet. Of that, 4.9 million is educational square feet. At 135%, 17 school districts would be funded for their actual square footage. And then the unfunded square footage would be 2.4 million gross square feet. Of that, about 2.2 million is educational square feet. And then back to Representative Bratton's inquiry on standard versus exception requests. It is a funky process. The department's standard budget of 176 million is what's in their standard budget. And then they were appropriated an additional $38.1 million this biennium for this school year for the 2.5% increase on the multiplier, plus the 135% in actual square footage. I would argue that 2.5% would probably be part of their standard budget. So a portion of that 38.1 million probably should be part of their standard budget. But the 135%, since it's only a 1-year deal, probably shouldn't be part of their standard budget. So maybe half of that 38.1 million, or maybe a little bit more, or whatever is attributable to the 2.5%, should be part of their standard budget going forward. But you know, I don't get into that world of standard versus exception requests, and maybe that's something the director can take to the budget department so his exception request doesn't look as big in front of JAC. I hope I addressed both of those questions.
Yeah, Mr. Wilmore, thank you. Really appreciate that. As you know, in our first meeting, I brought up something that's kept me awake at night, and that is all that we've done on the charter and homeschool front. I keep wondering, what kind of impact that's going to have on school districts out there, some of which are small districts. So the fact that we factor in ADM, Mr. Wilmarth, I'm looking over at you. To what degree, is there a way that we can figure out what impact that is going to have on our ability to maintain these facilities? Does that make sense, the question that I'm asking?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, overall, the trend of enrollment, which translates into average daily membership, it's been decreasing since 2020. Two things there. Charter schools, it depends on the situation of the charter school. An example is in Albany County, there is Snowy Range Academy that's in a district-owned facility that receives major maintenance funding through the formula. I believe the remaining, Fremont 38 is also in a district-owned facility. The remaining charter schools, I believe, are all in leased space. So they're not contained within the major maintenance formula. Those ADM are excluded, so they don't generate allowable square feet through the commission formula. And their lease payments contemplate major maintenance being maintained with that lease amount. On the routine maintenance side, regardless of lease space or district-owned facility, those square feet are funded for routine maintenance. So it's presumed the school is being allocated funding for routine maintenance through the education resource block grant model. But to your point, if you have more charter schools come online that remove students from the non-charter school facilities, depends on the situation. But charter schools are guaranteed 100% of their major maintenance allocation through the formula if they are generating major maintenance, or they would be financed for the lease space. And then the district in which those charter schools operate in have a lower allowable square footage because they have fewer students in their facilities. The square footage is still the same, but the major maintenance funding is likely going to be decreased overall in terms of the allowable square footage being computed. That's the tough part, I think, that Director McComey indicated, is when they build a new school, they don't build it to 100% capacity. And the reason for that is there is some anticipated growth presumed in that facility. And so from the beginning, that facility isn't generating 100% of its major maintenance payment because of the calculation.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmarth. And I guess just from a 30,000-foot level, the reason for my question is just to remind the committee we need to be aware that anytime students exit a district facility, for example, that's a little bit less dollars that will come in terms of maintenance. How big that issue is, I can't get my arms around that yet. But Director, maybe you have some thoughts, and I assume that's something you will be keeping an eye on and will know if a district receives far less than what it did a year ago. I'm sure you'll hear about that, right?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, we are watching that. We're tracking that. And actually, in the annual report presentation that I'll do, I'm going to cover some of that, where we've got a number of graphs of student population in the various grade levels and what the downward trend is that we're seeing across the state with all students, including charter schools, without charter schools, and a breakout on charter schools. So you'll see graphs in my presentation when we start talking about that after lunch that'll kind of look at that And I'm going to talk about later this afternoon also on those trends, what we're seeing across the state as well as across the country, and provide you some information on what we're seeing in Colorado. I just read some stuff over the weekend in Utah on their trending downward, and nationwide, it's birth rate is what it's being referred to. I mean, birth rate is just down in the country.
Well,
And so
Director,
you're seeing this everywhere.
yeah, that homeschool piece, I think, regardless of where you land on it, our job here is to be concerned with the facilities, and
Yep.
there's the issue of still needing those facilities. You know, we need the band room, we need the gymnasium, we need the football stadium, because many of those students want to continue to participate. So it's up to us to take care of those facilities, except that those students aren't necessarily generating the ADM to help on the major maintenance front. So
Yep.
I just throw that out to,
Yeah,
for us to
Mr. Chairman,
continue
there
to
are,
be
there are,
aware of that.
there are some school district folks here, and they could probably talk to it better than I can, but I do know in talking with charter schools in the districts that, you know, you can have, as you just alluded to, you can have people or children from the charter schools that are coming back and using some of the district facilities, and yet it's not generating major maintenance because they're at the charter school. So if they come back for athletic events or something like that, they want to participate in the football thing, then in the locker room and the gymnasiums or whatever, and they're at a charter school, they have the opportunity to come do that within the district, but they're not generating district major maintenance funds with that student being in that.
Exactly.
that
Representative
facility.
Bratton.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to confirm, I'm being told by school districts that they have received, that they do receive partial ADM, and they request that from the department, and they get that for students who are homeschooled. So if they're participating in, something at the school, they just contact the department, and that they are getting partial ADM for that. And would that not be tied to then the major maintenance funding?
Mr. Chairman, our calculations for ADM do come through WDE, or yes, through WDE. So that's the number we rely on, comes through. So on homeschooling, you're correct, because there's homeschooling and there's virtual schooling and charter schooling. And what I was referring to is the charter schools, some of those students are coming over to the districts to participate in some of those events.
Yeah, good point made, though, Representative. That's up to us to get our arms around the whole thing. Go ahead, follow up.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Along with that, so the charters are public charter, or they're public schools, and my understanding, and help me, refresh me on this, is that they have, that we passed legislation that said that they have to lease from the school district first. Is that accurate? They have to go to the school, see if there's available space, and that lease from the school district first, if that is available. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Director.
perhaps LSO can back me up on this in case I misspeak, but that did pass, that was in place, but then that went away. I think it was last year. We're no longer required to go look at a facility and see if it's available for a charter school. And that came through a lot of discussion last year, I think maybe in this committee as well as in the legislature, in trying to wrap our heads around all the different bills and what's happening very quickly in the charter school realm, and the, quite frankly, I'm going to use the term chaos that it was creating to figure out how to do that. What I testified to last year was, let's take Laramie County. So we have 3 charter schools in Laramie County. And so one building opens up in Laramie County for a charter school. So I go look at that and say, yes, it is adequate and it is available. So charter school X, you need to go to this school. And they say, no, I don't want to go to that school. Then we don't pay them if they turn it down. So I go to the second school and I said, you need to go. And they say, no, I'm not going to go. And then, so we don't pay them. But the third school does. Well, there's only one school available. Which one I just happened to call up this guy first versus this one over here, who's going to go or not go. And in the meantime, from the charter school, what they testified on is here we have these leases that we're putting out with these, to do this charter school, and that stuff's changing. And then to complicate it even further, we have some districts that actually in their lease agreement for the buildings that the charter school's actually in for the district right now, says upon any time that we want to kick you out because we want to open that back up for us, we can. So you had all these things that we testified on last year, so I believe that requirement went away last year.
Okay. Yeah. Lots of stuff.
Yeah, it's complicated. Moving
We
parts.
don't lack for things that need our effort. Anything further for the director? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Director,
Chairman.
Appreciate it. I want to go to a public comment on this bill. Allow anyone who would like to come forward. We are considering LSO 87, the K-12 School Facilities Maintenance and Appropriations Bill. If there's anyone who would like to testify on this bill, please do so. Come on forward. Is there anybody in the room that wants to? How about online? Do we have anybody out there who would like to testify?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I'm going to close testimony, public testimony on this bill. Committee, what's your pleasure on this bill?
Move the bill.
Moved by Senator Rothfuss. Do I have a second? Seconded by Representative Provenza. Discussion, further discussion on this one.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think this is one of the more important things for us to do. You know, this is a net cost savings to the state over time. It's an important cost savings for the state over time. I realize it looks like we're adding to the budget because regrettably, as we construct these bills, it always shows up as money at the bottom, and so it looks like we're spending something. But we had exceptional analysis done a number of years ago, and we've been talking about it ever since, trying to move this forward, recognizing that the most fiscally conservative, cost-effective approach to managing our fleet of schools is to ensure that we're adequately and fully providing major maintenance so that we don't erode and degrade the quality of the schools so that we have to replace them. I regret that we didn't get this fully across the finish line last year, Mr. Chairman, but at least we passed it for 1 year. I think it's incumbent upon us to keep pushing this forward until this appropriate statute is in place. Because again, if we don't do this, we're just saddling future generations of legislators with an obligation to build more new schools at extreme expense because we didn't do things right. And, well, you know, I've been on this committee 15 years. I think you've been on it about that long, longer maybe. And this is probably the most important thing we would do this year.
Thank you, Senator. You know, we have battled this issue for a long time, and it's difficult, fellow legislators, because really what we're talking about is the next couple of generations. And sometimes that's a difficult vote to make. It's a lot easier to focus on today and tomorrow. And when you project out 30 and 40 and 50 years, that's a difficult vote sometimes. But I do appreciate all the work that we've done over the last decade. And I'm looking at the director, that dates back to your previous stint in this job. And we learned a lot back then. We just have not been able to get it to the finish line completely. And that today allows us to do that. So I'm certainly in support of the bill. Anything else, committee? Are you ready for a roll call on the vote? Actually, would you give us a roll call on 87, please?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. For 26 LSO 87, K-12 School Facilities Maintenance and Appropriations, motion to sponsor. Senator Dockstader? Aye. Senator McEwen? Aye. Senator Rothfuss? Representative Bratton?
Aye.
Representative Geringer?
Aye.
Representative Heft? Representative Provenza?
Aye.
Vice Chair Angelos is excused. Chairman Landon.
Aye.
That is 8 aye, 1 excused.
Okay, thank you very much, Ashley, appreciate it. So 87 has passed, and we'll go on to the session. Obviously, all the way through the processes that appropriations type bills go through. So Tanya?
Mr. Chairman, do you have a designation for which house you'd like this bill to start in? The House or the Senate?
Bonnie, did it pass it last time, the Senate?
We screwed it up last time. Maybe we start it and then we hand it over to the House. You guys can fix it.
Yeah, I'm sorry that the House had it right, and then we decided to do something to it.
How about you do your jobs this time?
Yeah. You think we can lift it right off the bat?
I think we
I'm
can.
looking at my fellow senators here, the former president, maybe we could, yeah. Let's make it a Senate bill, and we'll try to take it and get it through right away. So appreciate that. So I'm looking at the agenda, Director, and it's a little early for us to take a full lunch break. I'm kind of trying to figure out how we can break into the middle of what is going to be a really important conversation with you today. You've done a lot of work that we want to make sure we address appropriately. So do you feel like we can maybe do some introductory and get into this? And then is there a stopping point in there about an hour from now? What do you think?
Mr. Chairman, we could make that happen. Matter of fact, I was hoping we could stay a little bit ahead of schedule with your help and maybe not have to stay till 7 o'clock tonight.
Yeah. Well, I'm coming off a corporations committee that lasted till 7:30 at night, so.
Well, I know your
Didn't have
LSO
a very
staff's
good
going to be
record in
busy
this
the next
room last
couple of
week,
days with
but
education too.
judiciary
so.
and corporations and, well, let's keep going, committee, and I do think that we probably will need to take a break about an hour down the road here. So let's try to find an appropriate place to do that. But school facilities, annual report, biennial budget request. This is a little bit different, Director. I want to kind of set the stage. We haven't always worked this hard, this early, to get this information in front of the Select Committee. And so I want to tip my hat to all of you who did that and to our staff to try to stand this up. And that gives us an opportunity today, committee, to look at all this information. And then in the October meeting is when we would actually take a vote on the budget bill. But thank you for all that effort, and Director, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And by the way, Senator Rothfuss is serving as our acting vice chairman. So if I have to exit for a moment, you're going to take it over, Senator. But anyway, thanks, Del. Take it away.
Thank you. I'll leave it to your pleasure, Mr. Chairman, if you want me to kind of go through in each section and then ask questions afterwards, or as I'm going through. Some sections are shorter than others. I think you'll get a feel for some of it. You probably just wait till the end, but others certainly in the center or something to keep kind of continuity in your thought process. Feel free to interrupt.
Yeah, I think we will. And committee, please don't hesitate. A lot of this stuff, even if it's not new, it's something that we've got to make sure that we understand as we go along. And so, and by the way, I want to look over your shoulder
just
and
getting ready to do
recognize
that.
the chairman of our School Facilities Commission, Mr. Tarter. It's good to see you. Thank you for being here. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So I have with me today on the staff, I have John Rexis. John's our manager for our PM group, project manager supervisor. Have online, and he'll be doing the second section when we come up and talk about the actual budget for the department for the year, is Jeremy Ravel. He's the CFO for the department, and so he'll be presenting that online. Then I have staff for some of the later topics and perhaps weighing in on maybe some of the questions you might have, say on ADM and growth of the schools or declines, those sort of things. I have Amber Leach. Amber is our planning supervisor, and then Lenora Simpson is our procurement purchasing agent. So if they raise their hands back there, Amber and Lenora on, I guess, your left is Amber. And and then, of course, Mr. Jack Tarter, chairman for the School Facilities Commission, is up here. I was having him sit at the table so he can't get away without being up here and answering any questions you might have. And we also have another, at least one commissioner. And I'll let the chairman introduce, and perhaps some others may be showing up. I think we're going to have another one show up, and like mentioned earlier, we're a little bit early, so hopefully they'll be here also. So, Chad.
Great. And please, feel free, welcome. I appreciate having you here. And as they come and join us, please don't hesitate to introduce them as well.
Our other commissioners here right now is Scott Thorson from Rollins,
Great.
an excellent addition. He's our newest member. You know, I will tell you a little story here.
All right.
Mr. Chairman. I was watching TV last Thursday night, and there was two Georgia football teams start kicking off the high school season. And just so you can put costs with things, they were dedicating a new high school football stadium for $62 million. And I about fell out of my chair. I'm a little tight with a dollar. And, I just, I go, oh my gosh, But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that.
Well, I hope they won.
I couldn't watch it.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Bill. Yep.
We'll go ahead and get started. So first, under your tab 1, and this would be on page 1 of 96. So this is kind of the executive summary for the department this year. And of course, we're required by Wyoming statutes 2115-119 and 2115-21 to provide this report to the Governor, Select Committee on School Facilities, our commission, Joint Appropriations Committee, and certainly the districts and the citizens of Wyoming. So we do this every biennium for you folks, and look forward to it, actually, because it really talks a lot in detail about what we do and why we do what we do. I know you have a lot of new members on the committee, so I'm not going to read all 200 pages of this, so I'll kind of highlight as I go through, but certainly feel free to ask any questions as we kind of move through. So this request this year, and at the end, we'll talk about the biennium budget request. This 2027-28 biennium budget request really looks back and looks at historical proposals. We'll give you some charts and graphs in there as kind of where we've been and where we're headed. And it's organized with the financial reports, the population trends we've already talked about to some degree, remediation schedules. So what's remediation schedules? That's the work, the dollars that you've already given us, and how we're going to roll that out and the time frame that we think projects will take. And we talk a little bit about deployment schedule again. What I just mentioned, the biennial budget request at the end. And, it's interesting when we talk about the biennium budget request. And as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, we're a little bit early in this process this year for having some of the numbers as to historically where we're at. But we actually started our budget cycle and looking at things because we do annual meetings with all the school districts and look at what they're needing, what is looked at in major maintenance. We're doing getting our information in the middle of October from WDE on population trends, which then goes back into your major maintenance calculations, what we use for capacity calculations to look at additions or new schools based on capacity. We had our FCI work done, and we're going back through and looking at that schedule for conditions of schools. And so we started that in February of last year. So you were still meeting and talking about the budget we'd submitted, but we were already working on the budget for this year to bring to commission. We try to bring that to the commission in May with a really high look, as to what that budget might look like. We refine it down to pretty much, they've got a pretty good idea in June. We kick it around with the commission and the school districts, get a lot of feedback. We have a planning session in June along with our regular meeting. And so what's it look like from a strategic plan as we move forward with the commission and the districts, get feedback from them. They're all invited to the table. And then in July, we go to, for the commission and ask for their approval on the budget. And so that's all been completed to date. And so what you see in here is kind of a compilation of that. There's still some moving parts there, and I'll share a little bit of that in the overall budget. Our overall budget is not required to be to the budget office till the end of this month. I think we have till the 28th. We've got it 99.99%. I want to run after this meeting, get staff together and take one more look of eyes on and make sure our numbers are good, but I'll share a couple of numbers with you on our overall budget ask and request as we get to that point later in the budget discussion, because again, it's just a work in progress, but I feel comfortable in sharing that with you all at this point in time. And so I think the big takeaways on the first page is when we come before you for budget requests, there's two things on the building side we really take a hard look at and we spend a lot of time on, and it's again required by statute, and that's to develop a schedule where we look at through the district facility plans, what the remediation and what the needs are. And the biggest, the two items there are highlighted. So you have a condition schedule. So we're looking at the condition of those buildings, and we look 5 years out in the future to say, is something going to be needed on that building with a remodel, a replacement, those sort of things based on condition of those buildings? Is there something we can do maybe in the meantime to come, and you'll see this in the budget request, where it's, say, a component project. But that 5-year that look really starts to drive the Mercer process, the most cost-effective remedy process, when we go out and look at those buildings, meet with the districts, really try to get our hands wrapped around. And again, that's a 5-year look ahead. And then the next one is capacity. So what are we seeing with the schools as far as a capacity standpoint? That's always been a major driver for this committee and for the legislature, is to have a seat for every student. And so there's been some years in past where we were building, the population trend was going up, and we were coming in and requesting new buildings based solely on capacity, not just condition. That slowed down, and we'll talk more later on about population trends and some of that at this point in time. But in that, we're looking 8 years out in the future. So we're taking where they've been, we're looking at where the students coming up within that, what we call the cohort population. You know, where's the kindergartners going to be in 8 years from now? How is that trend looking, and try and progress and look that 8 years out in the future. Part of the 5-year, the 8-year look has to do with, we've got to come to the commission. Once we determine there may be a need, we've got to come to the commission and say, we need some funding for either capacity or condition issues that we're seeing. Then we have to put that budget request in front of this committee, and that has to go to the legislature to get that funded. And then we got to start the design process, and then 18 months later, we might have a school. So if we see an issue with capacity, or we see a condition issue, it's really before something hits the ground out in the district 4 to 5 years in the future. So that's part of that look ahead, so that we're ready for when that happens out in the district. Next page, page 2 of 96. We talk about the facility division, our year and our review, meeting with the school districts, the 48 school districts, looking at their facilities, the data that we have in our AIM system, now known as the Operate system. In the past, you'd always hear us refer to AIM, that we keep all our data and the condition of the schools and update that now as projects progress, as we receive funding from the legislature on buildings. And then the next item that we talk about are our division's short-term goals. So looking ahead, the safety and security needs of the districts, Last year, we actually held a joint meeting between WDE, Homeland Security, the State Construction Department, and then the districts, where we held a meeting in Laramie or Cheyenne at the community college to really try and ferret out at where are we at with the state of security in our schools. So when I had came back, I first was director for the department in 2015, and right at that point in time, the previous year and a half, there'd been a pretty comprehensive review of all the state school buildings. We had a team go out and actually walk all the buildings, every building in the state with the district folks, and then try and determine what do you need for security in a building. And it went from everything, believe it or not, from you need locks on your doors, and believe it or not, we had a number of schools that didn't have locks on their doors, all the way out to security systems, lighting, those sort of things. And so there was some money provided. I think it was about a $10 million, $9.5 million first tranche, and then a later tranche when I was director. And then there was some work done where the schools were allowed to spend up to 10% of their major maintenance. I think there was 3 bienniums of that to fund school security. I think that original tranche that was looked at was in the $76, $78 million range is what was needed. And again, we had about 15 million of that came out in dedicated funding. So one of the things we want to do, again, is what does that look like in the future? I'm still kicking around and I haven't decided, do we need to do another full-blown study? You'll see that maybe in the long term. I'll talk to it in the long term. Do we need to do that, or do we work with the individual districts? One of the things that came out of our meeting this past year was that there is money available through Homeland Security. And I know some of these are taking place right now where the districts can ask Homeland Security for funding, and then they'll actually arrange for some security experts to come out, sit down with that district. And so we'll have the local fire and police there, we'll have the district there, we can have my staff there, and go through individual buildings or the buildings in the district through this funding mechanism to really tie down what they need to look at, what that needs to look like, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is that through state or federal Homeland?
It's state, but I think it's federal money, but it's through state Homeland Security.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
And so, so with that, Mr. Chairman, that's something that, again, I want to take a look at that, talk a little bit about that. If that's the second light bullet down here, we're looking at hosting the Safety and Security Summit where the districts can look at that type of information. Another thing, and this will be a discussion I'm sure we'll have when we talk about the budget. We're requesting 10 million for safety and security within the budget. Part of that request is what came out of, and the way we tried to structure that is out of that meeting that we had in Cheyenne this past year. And again, looking at out of that 14 million roughly, most of that is spent. We were down well under $1 million in the districts. We've been signing a lot of DAOs or funding mechanism sheets with the districts to spend that down. So that money's pretty well gone. The districts, there's many of the districts have spent their 10% of that allocation of major maintenance money. There's others that haven't, but a number of them have. So I'd like to see some more funding for major maintenance. And again, I'll leave that for a larger discussion as to why 2 million for vestibules and then the other to be spread through the districts. And we can have that discussion later this afternoon. The other is that one of the things that we're looking at doing, and quite frankly, this kind of falls on me that we haven't already started this, but we've just been so busy and I haven't had the staff to kind of roll this out. But we want to offer some routine maintenance training or training sessions for the facility managers for the districts. And so what does routine maintenance look like? What type of a plan should you have? Because House Bill 86 last year requires that the districts now have a plan and report on how they're spending their routine maintenance money. So what does that look like? Obviously, we can all use training on major maintenance, on routine maintenance. I go to some training on that every year, so I'd like to roll that out and we have internal funds. I can do that through my engineering budget right now, but it may be something that you may hear from me in the future to maybe replenish some of that pot based on feedback we get for the 3 or 4 courses I want to offer over this next year to continue that into the future for training for the districts and my staff. We've started back up the facility managers group. So we had, again, when I came on in 15, there was a pretty robust group of at least 18 to 20 managers met all the time. And we got a lot of feedback from them. We talked about a lot of these issues. With COVID, that kind of went away. When I came back, I was a little bit surprised to see that wasn't happening. I think the districts were doing some of that internal amongst their regions and stuff, but we've got that started back up. We had our second meeting at the July commission meeting, got a lot of great feedback, and I can use them on a lot of things. So some of the things that you'll hear me talk about coming up is the adequacy standards. So I'd like to form some members of the school districts to help us update those adequacy standards as we're going through it, so that we get it right and there isn't a lot of fighting or discussion when I roll out a product. They have a seat at the table to talk about that. The component or the changes that I think or the modifications to the facility condition assessment. We have a couple, 3 things we want to look at. Are the pricing for CRV right? We believe they were wrong, for example, on some of the transportation facilities or some of those buildings that were metal clad. They were saying you can replace those at about $186 a square foot. There's no way you can replace. I mean, it's just the number's too low. And so that affects that 0.3 score that we determined that we need to go do an immerser with. Some of the life cycle, for example, they used in the study, they were very conservative. These come off of national standards, but they said the life cycle on brick for our buildings is a 50-year life. And so that shows up at a cost. We haven't replaced any total brick outside. Yeah, we do point and tuck, but we don't do that at 50 years. We've got 80, 100-year-old buildings and school buildings, much less other buildings around the state where we're not replacing all the bricks. So we want to get those life cycle costs in. And again, that facility group is going to be a great help in sitting down and saying what these should look like and get their feedback in that. So the other thing that we've got that we're currently starting on and we've got to, and this is statute driven, is doing the adequacy standards. You heard me talk a little bit about that. We're required to do that every 4 years. And so, for example, some things that are there that I've heard feedback from the districts and personally going around and seeing where industry's at and getting feedback from industry is the square footage that we allot, for example, I think needs to be increased for our CTE spaces. We have a number of different types of CTE spaces. You can have something that is more book driven, and so we have extra square footage in there. It might be 60 square foot per student versus lower that you have in a classroom, all the way up to 125 for your wood shop or automotive or welding shops. But truly, I think those need to be in that 200 square foot range. So again, that's what we'll be looking at in the adequacy standards, things that over the years that have cropped up, we've kept track of, the districts have kept track of. You've probably got comments from some of your constituents in your school districts that this needs to change. We do that and required by statute every 4 years. So we're currently working on that. Next page, on page 3, long-term goals. There was a lot of discussion on this last year. It actually passed in House Bill 86, and that was a 20-year strategic plan. We'll really get to the issue, I think, not only on school buildings, but state buildings. Some of the questions that I heard earlier on life cycle of buildings, what's that look like? I heard a comment earlier when LSO was up here. So we got this extra money this year in major maintenance. Has that made a difference yet? We'll be able to track that through our a facility assessment on buildings and report back in the strategic plan to the state on a yearly basis. Are we seeing a difference? I want to track and see, are we seeing a difference? If we're going to spend that additional money, Now we have a system through the same system that we didn't have in the past. It's been upgraded to where we can make real-time decisions. In the past, it was a snapshot in time until we did the next one. Now, when you provide money, say for a component project, when we get that money, it's specific to that building. It's shown, the reason we asked, it's in that facility condition assessment. We'll take that off the books, so it'll change that score, and we'll see that real-time changes in those scores and be able to tell, is this making a difference in that major maintenance funding? And this strategic plan, I believe, will get us there. And so we'll be working on that. And then finally, the bottom bullet down there, safety and security standards is something that, again, I think needs an address. I'm just not exactly sure how comprehensive we need to do that, or maybe what areas. And again, this is something that I'll work with the districts on to figure out what we want to do there. The other is school bus maintenance and facility parking designs and standard guidelines. I think we need to go back and look at that. And then along those lines, one of the things that we're contemplating, had a visit with the commission on in July is we've talked a lot on school buildings on prototypes. And, you know, that's kind of hard to do on prototypes. You can get a lot of the stuff right, but your schools are really based on the number of students in your population grade. And so you can't have a prototype for, say, a 600 student building when you only have to build it for 200 kids, or vice versa. So it's hard. You can get a lot of takeaways, and I know the districts go and look at buildings that are already built around the state before they start working on the design with their current building, but it's harder to do. I think on the school bus maintenance facilities, the way that's set up now, you have three situations. You have small bus facility, a medium bus, and it's based on the number of buses that a school district has that fits within those realms. So how many bays, how much room do you need say for the storage and for their bathrooms, those sort of things. And then you're large. And so I think we probably can work in the future to put an architect on, come in and design those prototype buildings to fit those scenarios, because they're really more driven by the number of buses. And then when you have a large, you can set it at that bottom level of a large. And really what you're talking about for the most part is more bays to do maintenance on for your mechanics, and roll that out that way. And I think that would be a benefit. Statewide, we can actually reduce our design costs by doing that in the future on those buildings. We can have a pretty good apples to apples comparison amongst all the districts on what that looks like for them, and be able to roll those projects out faster since we have a prototype design. And so, I kind of compliment, I compliment John for taking a look at that. Maybe that's something that we can roll out when we look at these facilities. Again, one of our long-term goals for the department to work on. So the next page, Mr. Chairman, on page 4, last page of
Page 4 of 96,
yeah,
Director.
is really the
Just a
budget.
reminder.
Charlie, what's
Yeah.
your motion?
So I want to kind of skip over this because this is really the budget, and we're going to talk about it at the end. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll certainly take any questions you all might have on the first section of.
Any
the annual
questions
report.
on the introductory piece? Everyone, I know you've read every word of that. It was provided in advance. So, Director, please continue.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the next will be our facilities report on budget and our operations. So I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Jeremy Ravel. And Jeremy, if you'd like to go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yeah.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Starting on tab 2, page 5 of 96. This is our,
Jeremy, can you do me a favor, and just for the record, would you introduce yourself?
sure, I'm Jeremy Ravel. I'm the Chief Financial Officer and Database Programmer for the Wyoming State Construction Department.
Thank you very much. Please continue.
You're welcome. Beginning on tab 2, page 5 of 96, this is our monthly financial statement as of June 30th of 2025. So the final month of fiscal year 25. The first page there, page 5, is our appropriations executive summary report, which just takes into consideration kind of our 3 categories of funding: operations, major maintenance, and capital construction. It has the total of all appropriations from the inception of school facilities till current. Moving over to page 6, we have our breakdown, page 6 of 96. Breaking it down, this page covers just the operations appropriations since inception. Page 7 of 96 breaks down major maintenance. So this is major maintenance funding that we have distributed out to the school districts since inception up to today. You will notice in column F, we're just about done. We're in the process of reconciling fiscal year 25 expenditures with the school districts. So the number over in column F down towards the bottom will be updated once we have that complete. They had until July 31st to get all that information in, and we're just about done reconciling all that. Moving on to page 8 is capital construction. All the appropriations since inception for CapCon related projects, engineering and technical. Page 9 of 96, this is just our transaction summary report that we use to track as we contract funds for various projects. We move those funds out of the budgeted category into the contracted category. And this transaction summary report allows us to track that monthly. So page 10 through 13 is our itemized unanticipated account funding. For 17-18, we still have a balance in unanticipated. As the projects appropriated in those sessions are the only ones that can access that unanticipated funding. So as those projects are completed and there's no projects left in that funding source to request unanticipated from the SFC, we will revert those funds. So page 11 is the 21-22 unanticipated. Moving through page 12, the balance of our 23-24 unanticipated. Page 13, 25-26 unanticipated. Moving on to page 14, this is just an itemization by district, by building, and by project. The amount of funds for that month that we contracted for the various projects that are out there, that's covered through pages 14 with a total over on page 15. Page 16 are those same projects, just recording those monies moving from the budgeted category to the contracted category for the same projects you saw on the previous 2 pages. Moving to page 17, so I won't go through every page, but page 17 through 31 is our monthly LSO report that we prepare. This is a great source if you want to go in and look at a specific district, a specific project, kind of from a high level, what the current budget is, how much in contracts have been awarded and expensed. This is a great report to go through on there. So I'm gonna move over from page 17 to page 31. Excuse me, 32. So 32, at the time that this was recorded, this is an itemization of all the school districts' 2025 major maintenance reports that they submitted. You're able to see what districts expended, how much they expended in the previous fiscal year for major maintenance, interest income that they earned on those deposits, as well as the first quarter fiscal year 26 payment that went out, totaling that over in the last column F. Moving on to page 33. At the top, itemizing B11, so we had only one B11 in fiscal year 25. Statutorily, we can move up to 15% between phases with governor approval. The Little Powder project, that was the only B11 that we had. Down below that is emergency, so we have our emergency funds. We only had one emergency that was declared by the SFC to fund that project at the bottom of page 33. Moving on to 34, for the fiscal year 25, these are the itemized buildings that were closed, demolished, and disposed. One at the top, 4 that were demolished and 14 that were disposed during the fiscal year.
So, quick question on that front. What's the difference between disposed and demolished?
Well, disposed is the category that we have, maybe they sold it or deeded it away versus demolishing it to the ground.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Page 35, we have 3 new schools that were opened in the fiscal year. We had no additions to buildings that were constructed during fiscal year 25. And with that, I'll stand for any other questions there might be.
Thank you, Mr. Revelle.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. A lot of information that you've covered. And committee, any specific questions? Representative Bratton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is actually a question for Matt, but it has to do with these pages, which is why I think now is the appropriate time to ask that. So Matt, as we spoke earlier on the appropriation on the bill, page 12, lines 19 through 23, that $2,780,000 that wasn't in the commission or request or the construction request, is that what you were telling me was Laramie number 1 on page 11 of 96? Is that where that came from?
Go ahead, Mr. Wilmar.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Representative Brand, I think that's going to be held back towards the budget discussion.
Okay,
So I think that's why you'll raise that, yeah.
belay that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. And we do have plenty of time today to get to questions as they come a little bit later. We'll be going through.
But Mr. Chairman, maybe I'll just, I believe Representative Brandon, you're on page 11 of 96. Just so you can orient yourself with this report. So when you receive these on a monthly basis from the commission via LSO, they report on a monthly basis these reports, and we send them out via email. But I just want to orient you to how do I interpret this? So that Coyote Ridge Elementary School 5-6, so in the 21-22 biennium, this project was originally funded out of that biennium's appropriation. Along with that was $1.5 million $1.5 million associated in all those appropriations for what we call unanticipated funding. It's generally about a 6% budget amount that doesn't have any targeted project, but it's an amount that the commission can tap into for unexpected costs associated with those projects that the legislature has funded. So what the commission and the department have reported here is that on April 28th of 2022, $500,000 was approved by the commission to move from that $1.5 million to that Coyote Ridge project to provide adequate acreage. So it's just it's an accounting on a project-specific basis that the commission's approved for that transaction. So that's, and then you can see that remaining budget amount in June of 2025, what the $1 million was used for additional costs related to the demolition of the Tinsleep Elementary, Middle, and High School, or that K-12 facility. So it looks a little intimidating on terms of what all these reports and pages are, but I hope that helps provide some background information.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmore. Appreciate that. So, Mr. Vell, please proceed, or Director, if you've
Mr.
got
Chairman.
something.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for going over this, Jeremy. Just on page 32 of 96, the major maintenance report, I'm just looking at the total balances carried over, and just a little bit curious about some of these that are in the double digits of the millions. Laramie number one, 24.7 million. Campbell number one, 17.9 million, and Goshen number one, 12.4 million. I'm just curious, I don't have necessarily a sense of what that carryover is versus their total amount that's budgeted. And so wondering why we're carrying over high balances. Are those districts anticipating some major maintenance in the future, so they're kind of banking up a little bit? Or is it something that they're getting more money than really is necessary? And just looking at the relationship between, Laramie number one and Goshen, just the size of the districts, and the number of buildings and whatnot, just looking at the relative amounts there. I don't know if that's for Jeremy or the director, but would like some feedback on that.
Jeremy, it looks like the Director will take it first, and then we'll sure offer you the opportunity to jump in as well. Go ahead, Director.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can give you some good descriptors, but to get right to the Laramie one, they do have a big project coming up, and it's the remodel on their junior high that I mentioned earlier. And so there's a lot of funds tied up in that. As far as the smaller districts, I think really a poster child for there is Shoshone. That's a brand-new building. Every year they're receiving I shouldn't say brand new. It was brand new when I came in because I went to ribbon cutting, but it's like 7 or 8 years old now. And so they've been saving their money, because if you look at components, how we replace those when they come up, roofs, I'm going to say 20-year life cycle. HVAC, 23, 25 years. Electrical, 25, 30 years, where they have these major components come up. So we do encourage them to look at what's coming up. And again, this new reporting mechanism we have through the facility condition assessment will give them what's coming up when, or the expected life expectancy of those. And you need to be saving for that time when those big events happen. Laramie 1, of course, a lot of dollars there. Campbell, a lot of dollars there. But they're also our biggest districts, and they've got a lot of buildings. And when you look at that overall report, then it gives them that time to come forward. For the commission and a couple of the senior members on this commission, you probably recall this discussion back in the 15 timeframe when we started doing those as, what does the major maintenance versus capital construction discussion we had. At one point in time, the legislature was really looking at the districts and that dollars that were set up and saying, well, you don't need any more major maintenance money, you got money. And we had a couple of year discussion within our department, the districts, and so that to encourage them and change that mindset that they need to be saving, or we're going to have a lot of emergency requests. You're going to see a lot of component requests that are one time this blew up, and components don't help you when you have an emergency. I think you can see from the report, we had one emergency request this year. I can tell you back when I was director previously that we'd have 3 or 4 or 5 a year because they didn't have money saved up in their major maintenance accounts. So really we've had that mindset change, I think, in the last 10, 12 years of they need to have that, but that is one thing that we track. And I actually have in one of the books here I was just looking at this morning, we actually have what is the percentage of major maintenance that they have on a percentage basis versus their needs coming up, a report on that. And John and his staff actually look at that on a yearly basis. And that's something we use in our annual report when we have those discussions with the districts.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Wilmar.
just to follow on to the director and address one of the questions from Representative Geringer. For Goshen, I look at column D. That's their ending balance before their first quarter payment for fiscal year '26. That's $11.6 million. That's 376% of their fiscal year '26 anticipated payment. So that's how I interpret or look at their ending balance as of end of June 30th of 2025. Now, it varies for each of the school districts. And one of the unique things with the major maintenance fund is by statute, school districts are prohibited from expending those dollars from any other funds or any other purposes. It's required to be segregated, and you see that they have an interest earned column. So they can invest it, they can earn interest on it, but that interest then has to go back into the major maintenance pot. And there is no restriction on the balance, unlike operations funding. Their general fund currently is restricted to 30% of their foundation program amount that the legislature provides them. Major maintenance has no limitation to it, so they can accumulate those funds and save up for a larger project, whether it's a roof replacement or an HVAC project. But I just wanted to give some context in terms and some history on that.
Representative, does that help a little bit? That's been a topic for a long time. You know, we try to encourage fiscal responsibility and efficiency and save your money, and then sometimes we roll in and say, well, you saved too much money, you know, but anyway. Director, anything further on that?
Just two quick comments. So
Yeah.
the big report that Jeremy referred to and has the breakdowns and back in page 19, that big column, that's the report that we do and provide to LSO, as was mentioned earlier. So this stuff is available. If you have any questions, certainly reach out to your LSO staff. And if not, contact my office if you have any questions on that. And then, Mr. Chairman, one final note is one of the pages we went over there showed the closed demo, whatever, and that caught back to the earlier discussion on the 115 versus 135. You can see from that report, just in the last year, the number of schools that are going offline, what the districts are doing. Some of them are small buildings. I mean, it was like 76 square foot, but some of them were actual elementary schools and those sort of things are taken offline. One other note that wasn't discussed in that, so a district also has the ability to mothball a building. So they can take that offline, come to the commission. You can mothball for up to 3 years. It doesn't generate major maintenance then at that point, but they can spend major maintenance money on that building. Or it generates 10%, I believe. Which mothball, when you mothball.
Yes.
Yeah, so it only generates 10% of what it normally would be, but they can spend any amount of major maintenance. So say they take it offline, say their student population is going down or whatever, something happens, comes back up, they want to put it back online, and so they need to spend more than their 10% to bring it back up online, they can do that. They can re-up that one time, come back to the commission, say, we'd like to extend this mothball for a longer period of time. And if the commission approves that, then they can keep it mothballed. And so that's another avenue that districts are using when they're taking schools offline and the major maintenance spending and all of that you need to be aware of.
So Director, on that front, Representative Geringer is very much aware of the fact that down in your neighborhood, there's been a lot of talk about the district demolishing or taking buildings offline in the middle of a conversation about standing up charter schools. And so I'm sure that, actually, I'm not sure. So Director, has that changed the way of thinking and in the way you go about whether or not you approve the demolition of a school? Some of our colleagues have reached out to say we shouldn't be knocking anything down because we want to use them. And there's a little bit of merit there, it seems to me. So the commission, I'm just curious if the commission has talked a little bit about that and if if you've made any changes on that front.
Mr. Chairman, we actually did. So again, it came back to some of the discussion on, do we then look at, if a building's coming offline, do we look at it, see whether it's adequate and available as it is, tell the charter school to go look at it. So that was all in that discussion last year. We did visit with the commission on a couple of issues. So what we were actually we, the department, were weighing, because we had a number of schools that were looking at coming offline, do we keep those online? Do we mothball them? Do we spend money to do that? We actually have had that discussion. The problem is that it isn't just in, say, Laramie. I mean, all the districts are doing this. And so is there going to be a need? Do we keep spending money? Do we spend utilities bills, all the things that come out of the WDE side of the bucket to maintain those schools and keep them online for what if?
And those old
happens.
buildings cost a lot of money to
And they do,
maintain.
they cost a lot of money to keep them up and running, not knowing where or when that might occur, and whether or not a charter school would even agree to go in if we said it was available.
Yeah, good point. So, thank you. Yeah, we'll talk more as we go along, but thank you for that. And I want to get back to Mr. Revelle. Is he still up, Director?
Mr. Chairman, I think we're finished if we can move on next topic unless there's more questions on the budget.
Representative Bratton, did you have something? Oh, okay. Please proceed then,
Okay,
Director.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, I'll go ahead and handle tab 3. And that's really dealing with all of our projections for the schools. Again, some historical enrollment data, kind of what that looks like in the future, what we're seeing in trends. So the first chart up there, page 36 and 96, is K-12 brick and mortar enrollment. So that's the students that are in those schools. And so you can see that historical trend going back from 2014, roughly 92,000 students in the state were kind of those peak years. And then it dropped down a bunch in the COVID year, came back up, and what we're seeing is this downward trend. And again, this excludes charter schools on this particular graph. Again, a 10-year look over time. You go to the next page, the next one, again.
Senator
is-
Rothfuss.
Yes.
Dell, on that, how is it accounting for virtual academy students?
Mr. Chairman.
How is it accounting for virtual academy students? Would those be excluded also?
Let
I
me
think
ask my
that's
staff
specific
first.
to Albany County that you
I think I think under this one where it's brick and mortar, that's the students in there, but Amber?
They're not counted. Thank you.
virtual students are not counted. Okay, I wanted to repeat that just to make sure everyone out in the hinterlands heard that. So thank you very much.
And Mr. Chairman, just to
Go ahead, Mr. Wilmar.
add a little bit more flavor to that, the definition, I believe, at the Department of Education is any student that receives 50% or more of its education in that virtual education setting is counted in that virtual education student count. So it's not a student who takes one distance education course is being excluded exclusively from that count. It's at least 50% of their, or more, of their enrollment environment is through a distance education program. So I just wanted to give some context to that.
Yep. Next, page 37 is statewide without charter schools. And this really breaks it down by grade within there. You can kind of see the trends as it comes across. And again, all those lines are a downward trend. Again, going back from 2015, and this one we're projecting all the way out to 2035.
Senator Rothfuss.
Dell, in the future, just for the sake of convenience, could you include a second line on this, which is total enrollment at the top, so we can see what it would be, where we're looking at our virtual student and our charter school students? In other words, just to understand, is our total statewide enrollment dropping, or just our bricks and mortar dropping?
We've got some graphs
All right,
for
thank
later
you.
on that will cover that.
Okay, thank you.
The next is a breakdown by district, and again, just kind of showing you the numbers. So we're showing the same thing in a couple, 3 different ways to you. Some of it's real high level, some of it you can get down to the detail on the number of students that they have. And at the bottom is the percent of increase or decrease overall in those years. And this is, again, a note down at the bottom, charter schools are deducted from the district's enrollment totals. And then the exception for Fremont, with the exception of Fremont 38, their high school charter there at Arapahoe, because that's the only school that they have in there. So that's included in that number. Again, this is K-12 brick and mortar by district, and it excludes the charter schools, with the exception of the one high school there. Next page, 39 of 96, and I believe LSO staff handed out a handout to you. When I was going through this, we do this routinely with the commission, so we talk district all the time, and I'm sure you don't know them as well as I do, and frankly, I don't know where each of those is at. You get to Fremont, you got 8 districts in there. So I had them, the charts are the same, I just had them add where that's at. So Fremont 2 is at Du Bois is the district office, give you a little better mind's eye on it, because when I was going through it, I was going, if they ask me this question, I don't know if I can answer it on where that's at. So I thought, so in the future, we'll include those when we do this graph in the future. Again, the highlights on here is that in the green, this is pre-COVID numbers. So there's 8 school districts that have got back, and then the charter school. So there's 8 districts that have got back up to their pre-COVID level. There's one, Park 16, Meeteetse is equivalent to what they were pre-COVID. And then all the other districts are declining from where they were at pre-COVID. Now, you really kind of need to focus to some degree on the numbers also in this, because when we're talking, depending on the district and where they're at, you could be talking just a handful of students. Some districts are down a bunch, but they could go from one place to another based on literally 5 students being in that district overall. Last year when we did this graph, I think we had 9 that were up above pre-COVID, 3 that were at. And so you can see we've gone down to 8 from 9, and we've gone from 3 to 1. So overall, we're still seeing a decline.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's related to COVID or the change in how those kids went to school. It's also about birth rates, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Thank you, Director, for that. Please proceed.
Okay, the next chart is basically the same thing, but it lays it out in a graph form for you. And so this is going from 2020 through 2024. And it breaks it down each year for each district in just a graph type of form for you. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll move along. And so I'll move on to page 45. Again, those previous pages, I'll just broke it down district by district in a 5-year increment. Statewide, K-12 school, brick and mortar. Now this is charter schools with charter schools only, and you can see the increase in charter schools. And again, a little bit of that, you know, if you try to compare it to the previous graphs, you're talking tens of thousands of students. And so the graph kind of accelerates the look on this, but you can see in particular from 22 on, we basically doubled the number of students in the charter schools. So charter schools only, again.
Senator Roethlisberger, go ahead.
And again, this says charter schools only, but is this including virtual school? I don't think it is.
No, charter schools only.
Okay, so that's what I want, that's what I'm hoping to see. I don't know if it's here, is to understand, because virtual school affects bricks and mortar, you're excluding them from bricks and mortar. So we don't have an aggregate sum of all the enrolled students, and that was kind of what I was looking for. Thank you.
So the next page is, again, you can kind of see that broke down. We go back 2015 and then a projection out to 2035 based on what we're seeing with that growth in the future. Larger discussion on charter schools, I think, yet to be had when we talk about budget and kind of what we're seeing and what we're facing as a department in trying to fund for part of that. So the next page, again, is the same as you saw on the K-12 schools without charter schools. Again, a breakdown with the charter schools. And for the committee's knowledge, when we have our annual plan meetings with districts, we also have annual plan meetings with the charter schools. Moving on to page 48 and 96, your brick and mortar enrollment, and this includes charter schools. So the first set of 3 or 4 pages was without. This one now we're putting those charter schools in, and you can see birth rate in here, even with those charter schools in there, even with the increase that you saw, we're still in a negative decline position with the overall enrollment in the state and projected into the future. So again, those same charts with that, again, going from 25 out through 35, even with the increase that you saw with charter schools way out in the future, we're still at a negative decline when we include charter schools with their increased and look out through 2035. The next is, again, just a breakdown, includes charter schools. Look at the numbers there. You can kind of see where we're at as far as the individual districts, going back from 14 through 24, so a 10-year snapshot in time. You can see the fluctuations. And again, a little bit of that when we talk about some of these trends is you can make in some of those smaller schools, again, take Shoshone K-12 school, you can get some big differences in elementary or whatever with just a family moving in to the area and bringing 5 new kids in if they're in the K-6 portion of that school or a school. So, and then the last page, Mr. Chairman, page 51 and 96. There's 8 charter schools, 5 are in leased facilities. We're also anticipating Alpine and Chugwater coming on in the near future. And so at Chugwater, they're already in a facility there, but they're expanding what they're going to probably go into a second building is their intent. So again, these are the 5 districts where we have charter schools. You can kind of see what that comparison over the last 5 years is with the brick and mortar and with the district charter schools in there.
So, Director, Plat 1, that number seems kind of high to me, but that's not just Chugwater, or is it?
No, that's Wheatland, and yeah, Chugwater is part of, Wheatland is actually, Plat 1 is the district offices in Wheatland. So that's Wheatland also. And let me ask Amber again, she'd probably tell us off the top of their head, are there any remote schools and things in that also besides? Yeah. Okay, so.
Okay. Director,
So any
please
questions
proceed.
on that, Mr. Chairman? Again, I think the larger discussion is birth rate nationwide. We're seeing in the news down in the southeast part of the state where northern Colorado is closing down a lot of schools. They're seeing the same thing we are in Wyoming. This past weekend, I read an article in Utah. I think it was Weber County District. They had like 80,000 students in that district at one point. They're down to 48,000 students. They've already closed 8 schools, anticipating closing another 3 schools. So it isn't just in Wyoming that you're seeing this. It's across the country. We're just seeing a declining birth rate and don't know whether it'll turn around or not. So that's kind of the trend when we're looking out in the future. Enrollment projections, one of the interesting things, so by statute, we look at the cohort reviews and the students and come up with these projections. But when we've been doing our Mercer studies, and there is a provision within statute that we can also look at additional information on projections. So we typically do that when we're looking at a new school coming in. But with the consultants that we put on board, and they do this type of stuff nationwide, we're really looking, when we're doing our Mercer studies, and we talk about some of that in the budget request coming up, we're looking at 5 different methodologies now in how we're looking at projections. And I think it's going to give us a better number. That's probably a discussion to have with this committee in the future. Do we need to modify our statute to do that, or just use this methodology projection more in the realm of Mercer studies, capacity driven, those sort of things. And again, I think probably a discussion to be had there. So one of the things that they're looking at is the average percentile increase model. They'll look at a linear regression model, the cohort survivor model, which is what all this stuff that you just saw is kind of based on, the student age population model, and then a weighted average of those models. And again, we can make this available to the committee, but kind of on these Mercer studies, we're looking at all these different ones and then taking that average of that and trying to factor that out in the future. So let's talk a little bit about Teton 1. We're going through a Mercer study right now for their high school. Our consultant, to give you the depth that they went into to review that, they looked at past subdivisions that came in, type of housing within those subdivisions, how many students were generated back in the 2000, 2008, when those type of things occurred within the district, to try and project, because they have released a lot of opportunities to build within Teton 1 right now, within Teton County, with new housing. It kind of ebbs and flows. They don't allow much of anything, and then it kind of breaks loose after that momentum builds up over a decade or so. And so there's a lot of housing being proposed. So they actually didn't have the student's name or number, but they have a number associated with every student in their high school. They went out and saw where those students were at, what type of a house they were in. Was it a 3-bedroom, a single bedroom, or whatever for every student they had? Then went back and analyzed what happened in the future, where'd those students come from when this other subdivisions happened. Then looking forward to when this new subdivisions are coming online, how many might be generated out of a certain type of house or household or area or income data to try and come up with what we're looking at for future growth. So there's more sophisticated ways to do this in the future. Some of that, I don't think we'd have the staff to be able to do that in depth statewide, so this cohort study is good, but I think there's some other opportunities. I think Senator Rothfuss has brought this up in the last couple of years on, what are we looking at? How are we looking at those trends? What's that looking like nationwide? And I think we can probably hone our skills a little bit more in the future on that to give a little better numbers.
Director, just as a housekeeping item, we're crowding the noon timeframe, and would love to finish up this morning on your comments. So let's please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I've got.
That's it, huh?
Yeah.
That's pretty good timing there.
Motion to adjourn.
Any questions for the department? No such thing as a bad question. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's good stuff. A lot of good information here that really helps. And Chairman, thank you for being here. Any comments that you want to make, Mr. Chairman?
No,
You're-
except I will express,
Let's get the microphone over to the chairman. Just want to give you an opportunity. Thanks for being here, as always.
and thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I don't have any comments. I know that the staff does an excellent job in preparing this, and I think when we discuss the budget, that will also, our board commission will support all of the items that they're asking for in the budget, so.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Appreciate it. So committee, just to kind of put a cap on everything that we talked about this morning, I think about this a lot. In Wyoming, we often hear from colleagues and others that we have a very expensive public school system. That's true. We're a frontier state, and I like to remind everyone that we do that by choice. It's by choice that we keep these schools open. We like having Shoshone and Farson and Meeteetse and Southeast, and it's a little disconcerting to hear the director remind us that other states are having to take pretty extreme measures and shut schools down. So that's always going to be in the backdrop of how I think about things as we move forward. we support Wyoming's school system out there because that's the way we want Wyoming to look. And that does cost a little bit more sometimes than if we bust students long distances or whatever. But always keep that in mind, and I like to share that with those who haven't maybe thought about that. But Senator Dockstader.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave, the director, you mentioned that we may need to modify our statutes because the picture's changing. Are you talking about 2-3 years, or do we start on this now? Do we start to tweak it? What's your opinion?
Mr. Chairman, I think it'd be a good discussion perhaps for an interim study. I don't think it'd take a lot of time for the committee, but to really sit down and have maybe a consultant or two come in and talk about how they're doing these studies, what that looks like, and perhaps from them on a more grander scale, other than just a building or just a community set of schools, what would make more sense for us to look at for population trends in the future on a statewide basis. So all these charts we looked at, again, it takes some extra effort in our database and keeping that stuff up, but I think it can pay off, particularly when and if, and I think it'll come when Wyoming starts to grow again and we see the need for capacity situations to get ahead of that and make the right decisions. Because again, we'll look at actually industry and those things coming in if that makes sense at that point in time.
Good question. Go ahead, Senator.
Yeah, follow up on that. You talk about the future, and what you described for us here is everything's trending down. There may be a few pocket areas that have some industry that shows up. The Trona Patch is coming back around in the southwest. Eventually there'll be nuclear. But all of those people are spread out over several different communities, so I don't know that one community will be impacted. Your thoughts on this trending down, and how do we best address that? Is that going to be part of that interim study, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Director.
Yeah, I think so, and I think a good example of that is, and I hope they don't mind me using their name, but we've been having a lot of discussions recently on major maintenance and routine maintenance and things in Newcastle at their school up there. And it was a pipeline school, so one of those schools prior to the commission coming online, they were given money and said, go build this school. And they built the school for the right size, but now they're only like, again, Amber's here, I get the exact number, but they're like at 35% capacity. So they're only generating 35% major maintenance in this building, and we've been up a number of times, like it's in great shape. And so we're having a discussion and I really hate to do this, but do we tear half that building down to right size it? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm struggling with what that, and I know the district is, with how do we fund that school properly just because of the way things have changed over the years from 2018, 19, 20 when that school was built? Do we tear half of it off? I don't know.
Director, we've never talked about this on this committee, but, it makes you think, well, should we be providing an exception here or there? How would you structure that, though? And, we always are very concerned about equity across the board. It creates a lot of hand-wringing and angst, and it's good stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the superintendent would like to come down and visit with you because he's visited with the commission and ourselves. And like I say, we've been up and went through the school again. And when I was previously director, they do a great job of taking care of it. They're very proud of it. They do a really great job, but they're just struggling on how can we keep it going with the dollars we have. And it isn't like Riverton or it isn't like Cheyenne where you could get rid of a school or two and move the student. It's the school. So what do you do with the school?
Director, thank you. I'm gonna offer for anyone who wants to come forward with some public comment. Mr. Rexis, before I do that, do you have anything to add for the cause, or it's good to see you? Good to have you here.
It's good to be here, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add at this time.
Okay, thanks for all your work. Appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll look forward to this afternoon. Do we have any public comment on this morning and on the presentation you just heard from construction management. State Construction did a good job of outlining some things we got to think about going forward. So anybody in the room want to provide any testimony? Do we have anybody online for public comment?
No, Mr. Chairman, you do not.
Okay, committee, we're going to take an hour and 10 minutes. We'll come back at 1 o'clock and get started this afternoon with the rest of our agenda. Let's break for lunch.